And so we are joined by Avance, and Avance is a company that does background checks, and they are going to be speaking with us today about safer recruitment through background checks. And we are joined by the CEO, Kanan, who's based in Singapore at the moment, and also by his colleague who is based in England, Andrew. So without further ado, I'm going to pass you on to Kanan and Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction, Maria. And thanks, Dr. Munir. You spoke about the safety and security of children. We are going to, myself and Andrew, we're going to stretch the discussion to talk about safeguarding and child protection as well. So this should be an interesting one for you, I hope. So as Maria introduced, so I founded the company 10 years ago. We just celebrated our 10th anniversary. I know it's a kind of a not so peaceful times, but you have to celebrate to keep ourselves motivated and encouraged. But again, may the Lord give a lot of peace to the world right now. I know every day when you open the papers, it's not exactly interesting to read anymore. It could be pretty depressing as well, right? And with me, I have Andrew as well. He's a business consultant based in UK. And we're going to talk about safeguarding child protection, safer recruitment through thorough background checks. But before we dive into the topic, just give me 2 slides where I'm going to talk through what Avance does. And then we're going to talk about the pain points and challenges you might be facing or you might potentially face and how we can help you or how we've helped some of these schools you can see in this green box. I like to put them in green box because they are now in a good place, right? And more than 3,000 of them use us to mitigate people-related risks. And like what Andrew's going to show you in a while, out of every 10 profiles, 10 resumes that you might see, at least 3 to 4 post some form of discrepancies. And I'll let Andrew explain that a little bit more. In terms of products, we're a tech-enabled background screening company. As such, we have a platform called Screen Global, which is where all our schools, it could be the HR, it could be the safeguarding lead, it could be also individuals coming in, self-screening themselves. They're able to order more than 20 different types of checks across 150 plus countries. So pretty much the individual could have studied, worked, or lived in any part of the world, can be background checked. But of course, I'll quickly add is with assigned consent. Because if you're checking on someone without consent, that is private investigation, which is not what we do. We do completely GDPR or other data privacy X compliant background checks. And we have other platforms as well, Screen Chain, where previously vetted credentials can be re-vetted in seconds. So you don't have to wait for days and weeks. Like now during conflict, some of the checks could be delayed. But if it was already done before, then the Screen Chain is going to benefit you a lot. And then you can also do due diligence on companies as well, because risk can also be posed by the wrong partners, whether it's your vendors or contractors. If you're in a school environment, it could be your bus drivers, which is really the first line of defense, right? That's where the child gets on the bus and could possibly get violated. And then you have your cleaning contractors, food caterers. So it's not just the academic, non-academic staff, it's also vendors, contractors, and even parent volunteers. So with our experience working with a lot of schools, we have built a lot of case studies and we will talk through very quickly. I know we only have 30 minutes, but we'll try our best. In terms of the company, of course, schools are not the only client segment for us. We serve more than 6,000 plus clients across the globe. And we have 6 offices. I'm based out of Singapore, like I said, which is our headquarters. We have offices other than UK in US, Australia, Philippines, India as well. And we have won several awards for the platform we have built because it is sort of an Amazon-like experience for you to easily order background checks on whoever you're working with, so that you really know who you work with. If some of you remember the movie Catch Me If You Can, where DiCaprio changes jobs from a lawyer to doctor, he does everything. He's able to smoke all his employers, really because no one actually vetted him. I think even recently there was a show called Inventing Anna. I mean, there are a lot of shows whereby people who are not vetted get through and go to high places, right? And there are real life examples as well, which we will share in a short while. And we do have Triple Crown certifications. We have the ISO 27001, 27701, SOC 2, and even GDPR compliance certificates as well. If you, as a school, already use any human resource management systems or applicant tracking systems like SAP, Darwinbox, or PeopleSoft, or whatever, right? We have already integrations in place, so that could benefit you for in terms of a better, even enhanced experience for your people who are placing the orders as well as the candidates. I'll hand over to Andrew to talk more about the resume discrepancy issues as well as some case examples. Over to you, Andrew.
Perfect. Thank you, Kanan. Morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. So based on the data we've collected, as Kanan mentioned, over the last 10 years, 3 to 4 out of every 10 CVs feature some kind of discrepancy, from relatively minor issues like omitted experience or slight exaggerations, all the way through to more serious cases such as falsified credentials and qualifications. Now, on this slide, you may recognize some of the cases featured. One in particular was a catalyst for the formation of the International Task Force on Child Protection, an organization we'll come back to later on in the presentation. They serve as a stark reminder that schools need to remain vigilant because individuals with harmful intent will actively look for and exploit weaknesses in safer recruitment processes. So background checks give schools the opportunity to truly understand who they're inviting into their communities and ultimately to protect the people in their care. But it's not just about risk mitigation. A recent study by Gallup found that employees who go through a thorough and structured hiring process are more likely to stay with an organization. So a robust, safer recruitment framework doesn't just reduce risk, it can also reduce staff attrition. So when you factor in the avoided costs of a bad hire or reputational damage alongside reduced recruitment and onboarding costs, the return on investment for getting this right is comfortably well over 100%. Next slide, please, Kanan. Right. So on the previous slide, we looked at the risks schools are trying to protect against. But even with the right intent, actually practicing safer recruitment day to day is far from straightforward. If we take inspection pressure first, so statutory guidance like keeping children safe in education or KCSIE sets clear expectations, but in reality, it often leaves room for interpretation. So take something like an online search, for example. What does that actually mean in practice? How far is far enough? And how do you evidence it consistently? What we see is teams trying to bridge those gaps themselves, reworking files in anticipation of an inspection, relying on manual processes, or even informal workarounds. And the problem isn't the effort, it's that when inspection comes, it becomes very difficult to show your work and justify the decisions that were made consistently. So, and then there's the operational side. Screening timelines aren't always predictable, whether it's due to global disruption, something we'll touch on later, delays in certain jurisdictions, or simply internal teams being stretched or ill-equipped. At that point, schools are forced to make trade-offs. So do you delay a start date? Do you proceed with partial information, or do you try to find alternative compliant routes to get the assurance that you need? None of these are easy decisions to make, and the knock-on effect is real. So, delayed starts, poor first impressions for new joiners, and in some cases, we've seen candidates rescind their applications entirely, leaving school scrambling to find a replacement and missing out on the top talent, that they would love to join their organization. It's worth stressing that none of this reflects weak safeguarding intent. It just reflects a process that's under pressure. And when that pressure builds, consistency, compliance, and confidence are the first things to suffer. Next slide, please, Kanan. So when you combine the external risks we looked at earlier with the operational pressure we've just discussed, it's Not surprising that many schools choose to work with an external partner, and here's why. First, the complexity. Running checks across different jurisdictions isn't just administrative, although it is an administrative burden, certainly. It requires an understanding of country-specific compliance frameworks, local processes, and what good actually looks like in each region. In practice, that can mean different application methods, navigating time zones, negotiating language barriers, and in some cases, knowing how to obtain information that isn't always straightforward or publicly accessible. And that's where specialist expertise becomes critical. Secondly, there's capacity. So hiring in schools is rarely linear. It's very seasonal, in fact. It comes in peaks, whether that's ahead of term starts or seasonal programs like summer schools. Building an internal team to handle those peaks often isn't cost effective. So instead, schools use external partners to flex capacity up when needed without carrying that overhead during quieter periods. And thirdly, there's candidate complexity to consider. So it's increasingly common for candidates to have lived or worked across multiple countries. And as we mentioned earlier, that's where discrepancy rates tend to be higher, simply because there are more data points to verify. We see candidates who have lived on 5 continents in the last 10 years. So you can imagine, the workload that would be involved in vetting such a candidate. So having a partner who can navigate that complexity quickly and consistently becomes a real advantage. So for many schools, it's not about replacing internal teams, it's about extending them with the expertise and capacity needed to manage complexity, maintain consistency, and reduce risk. And that obviously goes for protecting those organizations against bad actors, but also satisfying inspectors and maintaining the reputations of these institutions. So now Kanan will go over how Avant supports schools specifically.
Yeah. I know since the start of the presentation, we've been showing you a lot of scary negative stuff. We apologize for that, but I think the reality is there are issues and challenges out there which threaten the security and safety of our children. I've got kids myself. I want to make sure that the schools they go to have very robust safeguarding principles, right? So far we talked about the issues, and of course, you can also try to solve or try to mitigate some of the risk yourself. But again, Andrew just talked about some of the advantages of using a partner. And I always say it's cost, benefit, risk balance, right? Obviously, if it's too expensive, then obviously it's not going to fit into your budget. So how do we balance it? So it's not about doing all the checks on everyone. There are recommended checks based on our experience, as well as based on ITFCP, which is International Task Force Child Protection recommendations, which I'll go through in a short while. But important thing is because of the workflows involved, and I'm just going to mouse over the first box, you need a highly automated experience. Let's face it, nobody likes to be background checked, including myself. But it is mandatory in a lot of organizations now, and is a very good practice as well. And if it's automated, it's a lot easier. And that's what we have built with our multi-award winning platform. And it's important that you are responsive and a 24 by 5 or maybe even 7 hour support. So 24 by 5 is done by our team. We obviously got a full day shift. And over the weekend, the chatbots also can support because a lot of the candidates might be filling up the data not during office time, might be after your work hours, which is why that kind of support is needed. If you're going to rely on internal HR, then the strain is going to be on them to stay up late hours to do some of these checks. I mean, we have seen candidates with over the last 10 years lived in more than 4 continents. So imagine, the kind of background checks you have to do and the different time zones you have to work with as well. And I think the turnaround time of the whole checks, TAT stands for turnaround time, this box. And that TAT, it could take anywhere between 0 to 15 business days, depending on how many checks you are doing. I think in terms of the platforms, I already talked about it. The other important thing is that unlimited attempts has to be less than 5. It's going to be we give so many attempts, or rather unlimited attempts at a source, which means you're unable to verify will be very minimal. A lot of our other players in the market will limit to 4 to 6 attempts at the previous source. For example, if your candidate comes from another school and you want to call that school HR or the supervisor to verify the experience of the person, you will need to try to reach that person, the HR or the supervisor. And if you're only going to limit to 4 to 6 attempts, then you might not be able to verify it, which is why the unlimited attempts proposition is very important, right? And of course, compliance to all the data privacy laws is very important. What are the different types of checks are there, right? So I like to sort of categorize it as two: security checks and integrity checks. So under security checks, they're criminal, for example, criminal checks, whether it's police or court, civil cases against them. Global watch lists and sanctions, for example, anti-money laundering, Interpol, political exposure, sexual offenses, and all that, right? Then you got adverse media. Has this person been covered negatively in any media? Social media checks, for example, TikTok and Meta, and we catch a lot of crazy stuff using AI. There could be derogatory indicators relating to terrorism, sexual stuff. Could be demonstration of intolerance at work, violence, vulgarity, a lot of these things, right? And of course, financial checks, quite obvious, which you'll typically do at a management level or people who have access to funds. And then you got identity checks as well. We have seen, people have fake IDs. The person you're interviewing is different from the person who's coming for the job. So we catch that as well. So we need to make sure that the person is a real person, liveness check. You got to make sure that the documents they're presenting are real, like your ID documents and whatsoever, and make sure these documents belong to this person. So there's 3 layers to it, and all these. I mean, the devil is the details, right? And if you go to integrity checks, previous employment already talked about, and you have to authenticate whether it's a real HR or real supervisor, because we have seen cases whereby candidates give their friends contact as a HR. They speak for me, So that kind of faking has to be authenticated as well. Other education verification of the certificates, we also got to verify whether the school is real or fake, right? So this is a lot. A lot of it is already part of the KICSI, the KCSIE. I know it's a very big buzzword. Whoever schools we're talking to, everyone is only talking about KCSIE, which is we're going to touch that very quickly. But these are some of the recommended checks, and we'll be happy to send this metrics to you. ITFCP's recommendations, our experiences over the last 10 years, we put it all together to give you recommendations of what are the kind of checks you should be doing. Either you do it yourself or with you already have a current partner, make sure they do these checks for you. If not, of course, Amans can help you as well. And these are KCSIE checks. Maybe Andrew can talk through the KCSIE checks.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Kanan. So part 3 of keeping children safe in education, or KCSIE for short, which focuses on safer recruitment. It spans roughly pages 57 through to 90 in the guidance. It's comprehensive, but as many of you will know, it also leaves room for interpretation in how that guidance is applied in practice. What we've done, working closely with our school partners alongside a detailed review of the guidance, is map out the full range of checks referenced within KCSIE. That includes both those that are statutory requirements and those that fall into best practice. So the next 2 slides outline the checks that can be executed by accredited partners on behalf of schools and those that cannot, because they typically sit with the school or the candidate themselves. So, if you can go to the previous slide, yeah, perfect. So an accredited partner can support with the majority of these checks, as you can see, referenced within the guidance. For those that are open to interpretation, like alternative checks where records are unavailable in the overseas category. So yeah, the one right at the bottom here, a partner can make suggestions for checks to run and discuss their individual merits to help schools decide how best to proceed. But regardless of who completes the checks, what really matters, whether you do it internally, whether you're getting support with them externally, what really matters is how it's recorded and evidenced. So each check should bring together 3 key pieces of information. So we're talking about the data provided by the candidate, the data generated as part of the check process, and then the data returned from the sources that have been interrogated themselves. Together, that forms a clear audit trail, one that allows schools to evidence not just what decision was made, but how and why it was made, how it was justified. And that's important, in case any decision making is brought to, into spotlight, whether that's by inspectors or, under internal review. Next slide, please, Kanan. And ultimately, that's what inspectors are looking for. Not just that checks have been done, but that there's a consistent, defensible process behind your recruitment decisions. And when you're working with, an objective partner, it provides that level. You can be sure that you've got a level of consistency there. There's not the same kind of bias you might expect from working with potentially with internal resources. Right. Next slide, please, Kanan. So before we go to the Q&A, we thought to recap what Kanan spoke about with Dr. Ali on SACPA's recent LinkedIn Live. So firstly, at this difficult time, as Kanan mentioned, our thoughts and prayers are with those affected by the war in the Middle East. In times of conflict, safer recruitment processes can be severely impacted. Access to official data sources might be disrupted. Kanan, when this happens and there is what's known as a compliance deadlock, what do you tend to see coming out of situations like this, and what can schools do about it?
Yeah. It's an important question, and I think Dr. Munir also talked a bit about it. I think during conflicts, in fact, not just conflicts, and this is not the first conflict we have seen in the past years, right? Typically, access to some of the data can be blocked. Like, for example, a police check or a court check. And then you got to think about the alternatives, right? And for some schools might be going through an accreditation process, and if they cannot produce some of these checks to be compliant, then there's a blockade there, right? So how do we manage that? And in terms of accessing the data is one thing. Another thing is you also have a sudden upsurge of fake data. You all of out of the blue, you would have sources saying that, oh, I can give you the data now. I can give you comprehensive data, and there all the fake data starts coming in. In fact, just from the beginning of the year, and then obviously after the war started, we have seen an increase in the level of discrepancy, especially certificates, schools. We have a lot of degree mills issuing um, non-authentic documents. So this is not the first time. We've seen this in the past crisis, past conflicts as well. But these are the things we've got to look out for, which is why you've got to make sure that you verify the authenticity of the source, and that makes our job even harder, which is why we always have to be ahead of the game to verify the authenticity, authorize whether it's an authorized source to give the documents and the information, and then do the checks. So these are things we have to look out for in times like these.
Brilliant, thank you. So, Karan, I think there's a final slide, but it's just an outro slide if I'm not mistaken. So
Yeah, before going on there, just very quickly on the second and the third parts of the questions as well. So biggest risks, of course, we've talked about it. But what are the things we can do, the alternative approaches, right? So if we cannot get access to, let's say, a police or a court, I'll give an example, like in Myanmar, we couldn't get any police or court data for the past year since that. Yeah, I think you know what's going on there. So with that, we need to think about alternative. For example, it could be a civil case or global watch list, social media, adverse media. Of course, it will never, again, background checking is not 100%. The more you do, the more deeper you go, the higher, the lower the risk is. But having said that, we can propose alternatives as well. What are the other kinds of things you can do to mitigate the risk of the profile? So there are a lot of approaches you can take to build a complete picture of a candidate, right? Because if you're not going to get the data, then you got to find alternative data. In fact, in our Screen Global platform, and all of you, I mean, once you go to avast.com, you can see the top Screen Global. Just log in, create an account, play with it. It's free platform, no charges. You only pay per use. If you order a check, then you pay for it. And in that platform, you can select a country, a particular check, and tells you exactly how the check is done in that country. So there's complete transparency. So certain countries where we cannot do it directly with the police or court, we have already proposed other ways of doing it, which might not be 100% compliant, But some of the schools tell us that, some data is better than no data. Otherwise, they cannot build a risk profile for a candidate. So, I mean, that's all we've got to share. I know we're running out of time a bit for Q&A, but I mean, feel free to ask us any questions. And you can also approach us. You can drop us a note if you want to know more about the solutions or how we can help you. A non-obligatory chit chat. I think we can do that as well. We'll be very, very happy to support you. Maria, you want to take any questions from the floor?
Hi. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. That was very, very comprehensive. If you could stop share so that, we can have you fully on the screen. Oscar, if you could spotlight us. Yeah, so Kanan, I mean, the bit right at the end about, where we are in the current situation geopolitically, and you've shared, I guess Myanmar is, there are certain restrictions of international students now coming into the UK from, there are 6 countries, which includes Myanmar. But apart from that, I'm just wondering, maybe Andrew as well, you can, what are the main sort of countries that you see international sort of recruitment coming in into the UK? Because a lot of our delegates today are from the UK, so I'm just aware that, there might be a particular interest there.
Yeah. So it depends on the school as well, because we support a lot of schools in the UK and the Europe, and we have seen, if it's non-academic staff, we have seen a lot of hires coming in from Asia, even Eastern Europe. So we have seen that. I think even recently the Ukraine checks were quite difficult, but now it's coming back. We are able to do more and more checks now. And in terms of its academic, I know a lot of the UK schools pretty much hire locals, but some, if they have third language options, then they hire from, for example, Spain or China. We have seen those as well. And other than that, if it is, I'm not sure whether there are also schools here who could have campuses in other parts of the world or other parts of Europe, for example. Then we see pretty much, if it's like, let's say like an American school in a different part of Europe, for example, Canadian school. We've seen that, right? So you are going to see influx of people from across the borders. And I think important thing is also the data sovereignty, how you protect the data, because if you're sitting in UK, GDPR is very important. And between UK and EU, there's a fine line between the GDPR as well. So how we protect the data, obviously we use AWS, Amazon Web Services. We have an instance in UK, and that's where we store the data, right? So I think these kind of questions usually come up. How do you want to manage the data transfer and all that? But in terms of people, I mean, these are a few countries I can pinpoint, but sometimes we see like a lot of, like, I think yesterday we were talking to a client in Spain, but a lot of the profiles of the educators were pretty much from France, even some of the Asian countries, because I think more and more schools are offering multi-language options and global studies and all that, right? So it's
Yeah.
becoming very global requirements now. Yeah.
Okay.
I think one thing to mention, Maria, is in particularly within the independent school space, there's a real trend we'll see with founding schools opening up international schools abroad. So,
Mm-hmm.
working with organizations like Dulwich College or North London Collegiate School, you'll see that there's a real trend in founding schools expanding their reach internationally, and the types of candidates that those international schools will be looking at, it's so varied. It tends
Yeah.
to attract certain types of candidates, and those candidates tend to have very international backgrounds. So. Yeah, while the audience of the BSA are very much schools based in the UK, a lot of those schools may have ambitions as well, going
Yeah.
down that route in terms of expanding internationally. So something to
I
consider.
mean, the work that you're doing is so important to keep children safe, because ultimately, if you have ensured that the staff are safe who are going to take care of these children, then, that's actually the key point. So, thank you for the work that you're doing. And I'm just wondering, we've run out of time, but if someone has a burning question, this will be the time.
I think while we wait for a question, one thing I would just say is, something that that given our area of expertise, we can support with is just the interpretation of the guidance and the guidelines. So sometimes, as we mentioned in the presentation, the guidance is more principle based than prescriptive, and so we can provide a kind of a layer of transparency or guidance in terms of translate that into the checks that are available so that they can be observed practically.
Yeah. So anybody who's on the call, if they are interested in using Avance, do get in touch with them. Andrew is based in England, but if you do visit Avance's website, you will find all the details to get in touch with them. Kanan, do you have any final comments that you would like to say before we leave?
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of us are parents in this group, and I think in that spirit, even if you do not want to use us, doesn't matter. If you want some free consultation, some ideas, some brain firing sessions, please feel free to approach us. I think it's all about safeguarding child protection of children through safer recruitment is what we stand for, and we want to make sure that just like how we have the other 3,000 plus schools, whether you're a boarding school or whether you're even if you're running a hostel services. Or if you're a company which is you're supporting for a school, we'll be able to help you. So we'll be glad to support you with any information that you need as well. There's a lot of white papers we have built. You can go to the platform, get some ideas as well. So feel free to reach us, consult@avance.com. I again apologize that we had to share so much information. I know it's a lot to take in on a Friday morning, but you know what? That's how complex it is. And the
It
devil, I always say
is.
devil's in the details, and that's the way to do it. So thank you very much for your patience and your attention as well. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank
And
you
good
so
Friday.
much. It's really important and it was comprehensive. So yeah, thank you. And definitely we'll be in touch again. And delegates who are attending, do give us feedback so that we can also pass it on to Kanan and Andrew and also Munir, so that they can, next time when they meet us, they can include your if you had any questions or anything. So thank you very much. And
Good day. Good weekend.
Yeah, thank you. And
Thank
for
you, Dr.
delegates, the delegates who are on this, please use the link provided for the next session, and we will join you at 10:50. Oh, yeah, 10:50. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye.